Just waiting for it to kick in, make sure that it's all good to go. I noticed that it was kicking out. It was kind of weird.
Yeah.
All right. Hello and welcome, Just a Family. I'm your host, Melissa Krechler. This is giving you something to talk about or just a live TV. I am an identity coach and a spiritual teacher and a business mentor. I have created Women Supporting Women, a foundation or a movement for women to support each other. Today's episode is sponsored by a Phoenix Identity, helping you burn down your life and have the Phoenix journey where, you burn it to the ground, reclaim your identity and recreate your life based on yourself. So that is what we do at the Phoenix Identity. Please go and check them out. Link in the description. Today we're going to be talking about starting over after 40, and I'm getting close to that. I have about 2 years to go, or a year to go now. And I'll be 40, and my husband just hit 40 in December. So 40 is a wicked age. So today is going to be an extra special topic. And to do this topic with me today is none other than Katerina Cozias. And I hope I said that properly. Please feel free to introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, Melissa, thank you so much for having me on today. I love having epic conversations. And it's so funny because I'm actually in Canada right now visiting my folks, and it's my dad's birthday. So I came up here for that. He'll be turning 73. And I look at them and I'm like, oh my God, like this is not the 73 that I remember when I was young, where you're an old man and you're sitting in a chair. It's like my parents are golfing and they're, traveling and they're, in these like food and dining wine pairing groups. And I'm like, Jesus, if they're living like this, 40 is literally, I want to say the new 30, but it's not even, it's like the new 25. So for anyone that's in and around that age, society tells us, hey, you're supposed to be going into a midlife crisis. And I'm like, that age will allow you to reassess yourself. And that's something that is and can be an opportunity. So before I go any further, yes, my name is Katerina Cozias. And I am over 40. In fact, I host a program with LA Talk Radio called Life After 40, LA 40. It's on a bit of a hiatus right now because of COVID and whatnot. And effectively, we talk about a lot of the things we're going to talk about here. So I am a media and PR professional. I'm in strategic media consulting. And one of the things that I realized as I was approaching that, wise old age of 40 is, oh my gosh, we never finish or end marketing ourselves. So I don't care whether you're a car salesman, whether you're a doctor, whether you're a stay-at-home mom, you are marketing yourself to somebody, even if it's a 5-year-old. And one of the things that I think we get to be excited about right now is this ageism that society back in the day used to put on us. I really feel that probably you and all your viewers and probably your husband can recognize that this is really just the launching pad. I actually turned 45 a couple of weeks ago, and I can tell you, it goes like this. I'm like, oh shoot, the day after I turned 45, I'm like, now I'm closer to 50 than 40. But my point is there's a lot of change that can happen, and it's up to us to really step into that belief.
Absolutely. I love that. I'm like I said, not there yet, but I almost find you mentioned midlife crisis. And as 30 somethings, as 40 somethings, why not make that midlife crisis, instead of calling it a midlife crisis, call it a rebrand?
Yeah.
It's honestly a life reset. It is hitting that reset button and rebranding and saying, I don't want to be this way anymore. I don't want to spend the next 40 years this way, and make that change. You're still young. My mother-in-law is in her mid 70s, and that woman is healthier than anybody, even my own parents. My father's passed away, but my mother, before we parted ways, was in her 50s, early 60s, and was just like nowhere near the way my mother-in-law is, who's in her mid 70s. And she's so active. She's so like go, 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 and just very healthy, very all around healthy. And I just sit there and I'm like, I want to be like that. Like, I want to be like that. Right.
Well, and I think I think the thing that I've come to recognize is youthfulness has nothing to do with chronological age. Youthfulness has to do with your mindset. And I have an aunt of mine, same thing, who's 92. She has more spunk. You know, she's obviously being a little limited now with her physical capabilities, but she still has more spunk than some of my cousins and my nieces and nephews that are in their 20s, that are like, oh, I just want to sit here all day and watch TV. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like the youthfulness is, it's a choice. And one of the things that I share with my clients, I do a lot of media training. And in this age, it's so funny that we're meeting virtually. You know, I phoned my grandmother and we meet over FaceTime. So for everybody watching, I'm sure you can appreciate, especially the last 2 years with COVID, it's turned into a virtual visual world. And what I share with people is, you know, the thing that's going to attract people to you is your actual innate charisma. And charisma is like an onion. You know, you peel it back. People think, oh, you know, charisma is that guy that's loud and flashy, or the girl with the pink hair, the tattoo. And actually, charisma, when you really peel back those layers, has to do with personal magnetism. And somebody like, you know, love him or hate him, you know, Donald Trump can be accused of being charismatic in a good and bad way, but so can somebody like Gandhi. You know, Gandhi mobilized 200 million people to peacefully protest the overthrowing of a regime. And he did that with personal magnetism. Both of them are charisma. They're just different types of charisma. And so irrespective of what age you are, we can tune into that and really allow that to shine. And it doesn't have to be loud and crazy. I mean, you know, another person I love talking to, you know, as an example, is Princess Diana. Right? For anyone that remembers Princess Diana, you know, she was very calm, very graceful, very quiet. And yet, anytime this woman walked in a room, all heads would turn. You know, so you don't need to be that person that's flashing the red lipstick. You can just be that person that is actually shining happiness, kindness, life, enjoyment, abundance, expansion out of your eyes, out of your smile.
Yeah, for sure. I think that people, when you talk about, you know, life after 40 and midlife crises and all that, people get very nervous and they start to fear what that looks like, right? If you, generations gone by, even our generation, right? The thought of changing your entire life, we were taught, and I'm going to backtrack. Sure. We were taught in our generation to plan for our futures. I don't know about your parents, but I look at the way my parents, and they didn't plan for their future. Mm-hmm. A lot of the boomers didn't plan for their future, and they didn't plan for the retirement. One of my own mother's favorite saying was, what am I supposed to do about my retirement? And I said, that's not my problem. Like that's not my responsibility to take, you know, and make sure that you're okay to retire. It's not my responsibility. So our generation really took that lesson of, you need to plan your future. You need to plan your career. You need to be able to retire. My husband just turned 40, like I said, in December. And his biggest thing is, what am I going to do when I want to retire? What am I going to do when I want to retire? And I'm like, honey, I'm going to retire you. Like, you don't need to worry about it. I'm going to retire you. I don't want to retire. I want to do this for however many years I can, and then comfortably, you know, edge my way out. But I want to do this forever. And he doesn't, like, if I ever mention to him, what do you want to do? Like, who do you want to be? You're 40 years old. Who do you want to be? Do you want to still be in this career? Do you still want to be doing this? And there's a lot of fear. I'm 40 years old. How am I supposed to start at 40? What are people going to think if I try to redo my whole life at 40? I'm like, who cares? Like, you need to decide.
Yeah. And the best thing and the best advice I love to give people is, everyone is going to have an opinion. Everyone. you know, and some people will agree with what your decision and some people won't. But everyone will have an opinion. So if they're going to have an opinion anyway, just do what you want. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, starting, I want to give a little example here because this is part of why we were chatting. So those of you who may not know me, I had a dream as a little girl. And my dream when I was 15 years old was to be a television talk show host. Okay. And I would go around, you know, during Oscar season with my, you know, my hairbrush, and I would like pretend I'm commentating. And when I came to be 18, 19 years old, and you're supposed to go to college and, you know, pick your profession and all that, there was a university that was in a different city that had a communications and journalism program. And I made the mistake at the time of wanting to stay local. They didn't have that program because of my friends and all this. And so I ended up taking business in university, and I ended up in a marketing background, which is fine. And so I then went into corporate, and I was in the corporate world, you know, with my little computer and my little job and my, you know, little business cards and all that, right? I'm checking off the boxes that society tells me I have to check off. So then I get to, you know, 10 years later, I'm now 29, right? And something is telling me this is not the right path. This is not the right path. But by then, again, for those of you who know, you've started to plant roots, right? So I can appreciate what you were just saying about your husband. It's like, how do I start over? I now have a 20-year pedigree, right? Or he does, and whatever he's been doing. So I ignored the little voice, and I said, you know, Katerina, you've got a good thing here with your corporate job and your, you know, 401k or your RSPs, depending on what country you're in. And I let another 10 years go by, Melissa. And all of a sudden, I'm 39. And I still have this little voice telling me, but you're supposed to be a talk show host. You're supposed to be in television. You're supposed to be and, you know, I was doing consulting and, you know, my whole media background. And I took one look at my life at that point, and I was like, you know what, little voice, you're right. And then, of course, the other little voice goes, well, who the heck are you to go to Hollywood now? Who the heck are you to start a new career now? Right? So we have that internally built self-doubt that then gets compounded by all of the chit chatter from the, you know, peanut gallery of our family. And so it's very difficult to make a move. You know, I know you can appreciate this because, again, everyone has an opinion.
Yep. I started my talk show in January at 38 years old. Right? Like, there's not, I started my businesses at 34 or around 34. 32. Yeah, 32. I started my businesses, and it just kept going from there, right? But there was a lot of that. There was a lot of the self-doubt, a lot of the question, a lot of, like, you know, I didn't, and going another route is I'm a spiritual teacher. I didn't acknowledge the fact that I was spiritual or that I was spiritually gifted until my 30s. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, you're psychic now? No, I've always been psychic, sweetheart. I just never acknowledged it. And then it's, you know, building that confidence and building that personal power and that unique identity of, this is who I am, like it or leave it. I respect the fact that, you know, I respect you if you stay, I respect you if you go, but this is my life, right? And I need to do what's for me. And a lot of people, again, take that fear and they allow that chit chatter, they allow the peanut galleries, they allow all that self-doubt and the 30 plus years of conditioning getting to this point of, you need to retire, you need to build this, you need to do this, you need to do this, right? Married, wife, kids, you know,
well,
husband,
by the time you're 40, most people are expecting you to be divorced with half a dog, you know, because that's part of the timeline, you know. So I totally can appreciate that. And the thing that I want to add to that, just to piggyback off of what you said, is if there's something in you that is prompting you in a certain direction, I believe that it's there for a reason. And so, you know, for any of you that might be finding yourself in that ambivalent state right now, when I finally decided to listen to that little voice, you know, that it just whispers, and it doesn't have to be loud, but it whispers and it's incessant. And I made the decision to go from behind the camera to in front of the camera. I made the decision to move from Florida to California to be closer to Hollywood, to be closer to the media hub of the world, and to really get myself out there. Within 9 months of my stepping on soil in LA, I was 40 years old. I had an opportunity to go host the Oscars, which you don't even, be a red carpet host at the Oscars that year. That typically takes 10 years to get that post. But I was so in alignment. I was in alignment with what I'm supposed to do. And I was getting that internal energy because I loved it. And what that does for you is it collapses time. You can literally fold time when you actually get the courage to listen to that little voice. So next thing I knew, my career took off. It took off. And I didn't have to have the 15 years leading up to that point because it was in alignment for me. So I love that you are working in alignment with yourself. And for anyone that's on that cusp, it's like, I have a really fun exercise, Melissa. Maybe this will be of help to your husband or even to some of the listeners. It was certainly a help to me. The biggest hurdle I found was giving ourselves mental permission to finally do what we want to do. And the way I gave myself mental permission is I projected myself one night and I thought of my 80-year-old self. Okay, so it was literally like a 40-year jump. And I started writing myself a letter from my 80-year-old self to my 40-year-old self. I was 39 and a half, okay? And my 39 and a half-year-old was saying to myself, who are you to go there? You're old. No one's going to want to hire you, blah, 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 right? My 80-year-old self had such a different perspective. And my hand just started writing and it started saying, girl, you are beautiful. You are talented. You are so energetic. You are so young. You go make this move and it'll be the best thing that ever happened to you. And I looked at my life from that 80-year-old perspective and I thought, who do I want to be at that age? And that was really a pivotal moment for me. So I don't know if that exercise might be of some help to some of the people on, your audience, but it was certainly a help to me.
Yep, I've heard that, and I've had that story been told to me, where a lot of people, even people who work in healthcare, have been on the units where end of life. Mm-hmm. And they ask people, there's a story going around and it said this man went into this older gentleman's room and he said, do you have any regrets? Mm-hmm. And he says, I don't regret anything I've done. I regret what I haven't done. Mm-hmm. Right? And I'd rather regret, and I'm 38. I don't have any regrets. Everything that I did taught me something. Everything that happened or every decision that I made because that was the information I had at that point. Mm-hmm. I'm now, and take my lesson, take Katerina's lesson. When I finally decided what I wanted to do and what direction I wanted to go in, and that was over the last year, everything else fell into place. Everything else.
That's
right?
The alignment. Yes.
Everything. Yeah. And people ask me, they're like, well, how long's your show been on? And I'm like, since January. Friday is episode 50. Right? And that's huge. Yes. You were talking about mainstream media. I don't know anybody else who's doing what I'm doing. I am live streaming a talk show. It's not on TV. It's on the internet. I am live streaming a talk show. It is also a podcast. It's also a blog. I'm creating a community out of the internet, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right? And changing it up.
And this is the thing, Melissa, why not you? You know what I'm saying? Why not each and every one of you that wants to do what you want to do? Let's say you want to become a farmer. And you're going, well, shoot, I've never planted a tomato, but I kind of feel that's my calling, but I have a background in taxes. It's like, yes, and we live in this age where if you have a calling, instead of putting on Netflix for 3 hours every night, You can sit and you can watch educational free videos about what you want to do. So for me right now, there's no excuse for anybody. Anything we want is at the tip of our fingers, and it's up to us to take advantage of that or not. And we can have a completely different life if we do. You know?
I'm going to share this story. When I first started coaching, and I'll kind of do this as my mid-episode promo too for the sponsor, right? I created today's sponsor. So I created a Phoenix identity. And when I created that company, I wanted to coach and work with individuals who were in high profile positions, who, celebrities, politicians, lawyers, doctors, people who had a reputation to uphold, who weren't happy, right? And every time that I would mention that I wanted to work with celebrities, every time I mentioned it, my husband, who has been unbelievably supportive, we will not go there, he's been unbelievably supportive, he would say, I wouldn't say that yet. I wouldn't say that yet because I was new. And that put a lot of doubt in my head. And he didn't mean it intentionally, obviously, great supportive husband. But now when I finally said, I always tell people when I do the pre-screening interviews, I am like the love child of Oprah and Tony Robbins, but I'm better, right? That's me. And so I looked at my past and I looked who I looked up to and who I'd love to be like, not be because my life is my own, but who I wanted to emulate in a way. And Oprah, biggest person is Oprah and Tony Robbins, helping people. And so when I realized that I was able to show up on this show, I was massive stage fright. I have huge stage fright. I don't like pictures, don't like videos, don't like listening to my own voice, but I started a talk show. And I started it. And I went to a show this past weekend, and Paul Schaefer and Valerie Simpson were there. They were on stage with our symphony orchestra. And I'm sitting there and I'm seventh row back, middle of the seventh row, and I'm watching them. And like the 5-year-old me is sitting in the background going, I want to be on stage. And I actually sat there and I sat with it and I thought about it. And I'm like, I have no fear of that. I would totally get up on that stage. No fear. I wouldn't sing because that's like a beached whale, but I would go up there and talk about inspiration, talk about following your dreams and recreating your life, because for you and I both, that is something that is so wholly transformational, is to just say, give yourself some grace, give yourself permission, tell yourself that if this is what I've been drawn to, and this is what I'm continually drawn to, why am I not taking that chance?
If I had stayed in my comfort zone, Melissa, I would not be able to sit here and say, I have interviewed Sharon Stone, Winona Ryder, Sting. I've been on the red carpet with Colin Farrell and, all these people. I mean, and not that I want to name drop, but it was something that allowed me to then expand and grow. And, we've all heard this, if you're not expanding and growing, you're shrinking and dying. And again, there's nothing that says we have to follow this societal timeline that people put on themselves. And for some of your viewers, because, if you're a gentleman right now, I'd like you to keep listening because this is interesting information. But if you're a female, I think you may resonate with this. Society has an undercurrent that tells us we must become a mother. Okay, it's like the female expectation. And at the same time, we must become a career woman, right? And so go to school, get good grades, finish college, get a job, buy a house, get married, have the kids. Like I said, now it's like get divorced, keep a dog, whatever. It's society's timeline. So by my mid-30s, I was stone cold single, and I was like, oh gosh, okay, now this biological clock started talking to me, which as a woman in my early 20s, I remember thinking, oh, that's BS. And what are you talking about? But for women that have kind of hit that early to mid 30s time frame, your body starts talking to you and it starts saying, hey, my fertility's coming up. I'm probably at my peak. It's time to have a child. So in my early 30s, I started to really experience that. I wasn't in a relationship. And what happened was, I think I was projecting a lot of baby anxiety that then the men were feeling, and they were kind of feeling that desperation. So they went, they were just running for the hills, even though I was showing up thinking I'm in my good, happy energy. So my entire 30s went by. And then again, late 30s, I was kind of like, you know what? I have an awesome life. I'm living my dream. I'm doing my thing. I sort of released that tension. And all of a sudden, I ended up meeting the man who would then become my fiance. And I ended up getting engaged at 42, which is arguably 10 to 15 years later than society would deem appropriate. But why not? Now I have this amazing partner. We have an amazing life. I have an amazing career. And all of that happened after 40 for me. So please don't look at 40 as some sort of like, oh, shoot, it hasn't happened yet. That means like I did something wrong. Society will have us believe that. And then the pharmaceutical companies will have us go on some sort of drug that they sponsor for us to feel better about ourselves. When actually all we have to do is go for a walk in the sunshine, like that's.
Yep. All mindset. I actually watched, I was scrolling Facebook the other day and a video came up and it was women who didn't get married until they were older. Helen Mirren, I believe, was one of them. Who else? There were quite a few, actually. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I was like, right on. Yeah. Like, what? There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with, I've met women who don't want to be mothers ever. And I'm like, absolutely. You don't want to be a mom? Sure. I have no problem with that. You do you. I support you 100%. I had children. I didn't have children. I, never wanted to be a wife or a mother. Who doesn't matter, right? Even for men, if you don't want to have kids, if you don't want to get married, if you want to be a hoe for years, who cares? Like,
well, and
as long as you're not hurting anybody else.
100%. And the one thing I love about Oprah is, I remember through all the years, even back in the early days when she had the actual talk show, and she was always talking about gratitude, right? Gratitude, and the energy behind gratitude. And I hadn't really understood that the way I should have. I mean, I don't like shitting on myself, but the way it was probably intended until a little more recently. And now I look back and I go, oh my gosh, like I am in so much gratitude for that decade of 30 to 40, because I traveled the world. I lived in Hong Kong. I lived in the south of France. I lived in Miami. I had amazing, good looking Argentinian model boyfriends. Like I was in my own misery because I wasn't living up to society's checkbox. And now when I look back, I'm like, dude, I had the best decade of my life. But you have to look at every chapter with gratitude. And it's for anybody, again, that understands quantum physics and the vibrational frequency of things, gratitude, love, some of these higher frequency emotions actually expend a different vibrational frequency than some of the lower ones like depression or self-doubt or sacrifice. There's a spectrum that you can Google. It's kind of like a tube. And if you're in this part of the tube, your life is miserable. And many times it's self-imposed. And you can move into this neutral place and then move into gratitude, love, appreciation, creativity, intuition, once you do, things will start to click for you. And that's why I'm so happy for you, because you're glowing right now. You know why? Because you're doing what you love. And yes, maybe Exactly. It's in your house right now. I'm in my house too. We're all in our houses. And we probably will be for another 2 years till COVID goes away. And
I like being in my house.
That's what I'm saying. There's nothing
It's comfortable.
Building our businesses in alignment with who we are. And that just will attract what we need.
Yeah. My husband and I were talking about future plans for the show, and he's like, I said, what if an actual conglomerate or
Yeah,
station picks it up? Yeah, what if they pick it up? And he's like, isn't that what you want? And I said, no, I don't actually. I don't want to lose control of what the show is about. I don't want to lose control of that say of being able to say yes or no, or who I interview or have a talk with, right? The integrity of my show is mine.
100%. And
go ahead.
Somebody that comes to mind right now that had that exact same thought process, was doing podcasts and then all of a sudden got picked up was Joe Rogan. Okay. Joe Rogan is a comedian. He decided to start a podcast to shoot the shit with people. And he did a few episodes, right? 50 episodes in 4 months, Melissa, is amazing. You should be so proud of yourself. He gets hit up by Spotify. Okay. So not even like MSNBC or one of the big legacy medias, just little Spotify offered him $100 million contract, $100 million contract to do what he's doing. And he has maintained the integrity of his show. You know what I'm saying? Anderson Cooper over at CNN gets 10 million views 100,000 views per show. The Anderson Cooper 360, right? It's like the numbers are so down, it's ridiculous. Joe Rogan gets 60 million hits on average per podcast. So you continue to do what you do and either it'll click or it won't click or you'll monetize or you'll double monetize. Doesn't matter because it's not the money you're doing it for. It's the feeling and the service to society that then comes back to you tenfold. So I applaud you for that.
Absolutely. I do love that, right? Right now, we do offer sponsorship on the show. So if anybody's interested in sponsoring and having your brand seen across our platforms, please
Absolutely.
do. But the sponsorship allows us to do that background work. It allows me to hire in the background. It allows me to advertise the show, right? And I'm not making money off the show. If eventually I do, great. If I don't, great. I have 4 other businesses. 2 of them are the show, and one of them is Women Supporting Women, which is a huge movement that we've created on just literally women supporting women. I don't expect to get any money from those 2, right? The other 3, yes, those are my actual money-making businesses. But these 2, that is it, right? Oprah just wanted to help. Did she make millions? Absolutely. But her intention was to help. And that's what I'm doing with the show. That's what I'm doing with Women Supporting Women, is just helping build those communities. And being women in our, almost 40s and 40s is that there's not enough of that.
Yes.
Right? There's not enough of that judgment-free, safe space where we can go and say, I have this great life, but I'm not happy. Can you give me some insight or help me? Or is anybody else feeling that way? If you're a young woman who says, I don't want to have kids, I don't want to get married, but these people are pressuring me, come into that group, come into that space and listen to us say it's okay. Right? And there's something so different and so powerful about that. Our conversation today about starting over after, you are absolutely entitled to start over after 40. It's your life. You were talking about that the colander, right? Or not the colander, the the vase.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Hourglass.
Hourglass. There you go.
Yeah. I like that one. But with that, 95, and I'm an identity coach, right? So everything that I do comes down to mindset. And then I have the spiritual, energetic, all of that. 95% of your reality is based on your choices and your beliefs. We are responsible for 95% of that. There's about 10% where you get hit by the life bus and you can't control that. Right. That is, sickness. That is other people.
Death in the family. Yes.
Right? Yeah. Life will hit you with that life bus. Mm-hmm. And that's about, 5-10%. But the 95%, that's your creation. If you're in relationships that you don't like, your creation. You're in a job that you don't like, your creation. And that's not a shame and it's not a judgment. It's, you know, I want to hold you accountable and say you have the power to change that. So why not at 40? Why not at 50? I've worked with women who are in their 60s and 70s, just starting out on their spiritual journey. Mm-hmm. And they've been some of the most amazing women I've ever met.
And everyone's timeline is different. You know, some people will get that hit when they're 10, some people will get it when they're 70. And it's never too late, you know. Somebody that comes to mind as well is Martha Stewart. So Martha Stewart was, you know, a housewife in Connecticut who, you know, was in the financial world to a degree, and decided to have a giant dinner party and really kind of just put the whole thing together, and then thought, oh, you know, I could write a book around kind of hosting and all of this. It wasn't until 55 that Martha Stewart created Martha Stewart Living. And now she's in her mid 70s and she's doing shows with Snoop Dogg. And she's an
I know, that's great.
You know, she's an empire. No one's telling this woman not to because she's a certain age. So why on earth would we put those limitations on ourselves?
Yeah, absolutely. Shit. I know she started young, but look at Betty White.
Yes.
Betty White is one of the most iconic women of our centuries. That woman, like, I was telling my husband when she passed away, I was like, oh, like, this is the worst way to end 2021 was with her passing.
Yes.
But at the same time, I told my husband, I said, if I had a spirit, it would be Betty White. Like, I want to be 99 in Betty White. Like, that's my goal, right? Is like,
and Betty White by all, because you're a master in your trade and you followed your heart. You know, and even for the men that are watching, I don't want to exclude you, because the other person that comes to mind is, you know, Colonel Sanders. We've all heard the story where the Depression hit in the 1920s. Colonel Sanders was 65 years old when he started KFC, you know, and he had this idea for fried chicken. And he was from Kentucky. So he's like, I'll call it Kentucky Fried Chicken. And he literally, you know, made the blend of the seasoning or whatever goes around this chicken that he was frying. And he was going door to door selling this chicken. And, you know, fast forward 100 years later, you know what, I don't want to please misquote, it might have been the 50s or 60s, but I think it was, you know, before World War I or II, you know, $1 billion international global company based off an idea that a 65-year-old man had. So you have a hunch? I think right now, with all this COVIDness that's been happening and the reality check that we've all been put into, it's like, what the heck are we waiting for? You know, what are you waiting for? Just go do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of women like us who will help you through that, who will support you, who will guide you, mentor you, and just build those connections with you that you need to feel empowered and feel confident. And not even women, just, I work with men as well, right? Not all of my businesses are geared towards women. I love working with men because men are so understated, right? Mm-hmm. And again, same thing with men. Why not change your life after 40? Who, like 35, 40, 50, 60, it doesn't matter, right? And I question this, and this I think is the biggest question. How many, and this goes back to my training as an identity coach, how many men and women, as they hit those life society expectations, as they hit those goals, how many of them struggle with mental health? So I'm going to give you my examples, okay? Wife and mother. So a woman gets married. When she gets married, so I'm going to use my own example. So before I get married, I'm Melissa. Right. When I get married, I'm now Tom's wife. When I have children, I'm now their mother, as well as Tom's wife. But my marriage kind of gets pushed to the side a little bit. Now, in the 2000s, I'm also a career woman. So I have a career on top of that. So I'm doing all of these things. I'm running myself ragged trying to get to everything and make sure that everyone's happy. So my identity gets put to the wayside. My identity with my partner gets put to the wayside, and it's my children and my career, right? And even my children get put to my wayside if I'm working a 9 to 5. So because then I'm culpable to somebody else. So when you get to a certain point, your children reach 18 or whenever they go off to college, whatever happens, when you become an empty nester, a lot of men and women will sit there, and women especially, will be, well, who am I now? My job's gone.
Yep.
Right? When you're now an empty nester and there's no children and it's just you and your partner, now it's like, who are you? Never mind who are you, who am I? You don't vibe anymore because you've put no effort into that.
Into this.
Right?
Yeah.
No effort into yourself, so you have no idea who you are. Now, same thing when you retire. So our generation was taught work, work, work until you retire and then retire. When you retire, if you're sitting there and you're doing that, who are you? You've spent the last 50, 60 years on this one career.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden that career is gone. Who are you then? So never mind 40, right? When you retire, you're already starting over.
Yes. And a lot of people, I have an uncle of mine who retired quite late in his early 70s. And he was an engineer. They finally pushed him out. They're like, dude, you're not even 55, you're 75, you got to go. And he couldn't handle it. He had no idea who he was. He had no idea what to do with his time. His entire life had been built on this 50-year career. And he manifested an illness. He passed away 2 years later, Melissa. Somebody that had been at the height and the pinnacle of life just collapsed into himself. So it can happen at any age. If you're 70 and you're 40 right now, you're 35 or you're 45 or you're 55, doesn't matter what age you are, you have so much life ahead of you. Why not lean into life?
Mm-hmm. We did an episode not that long ago called Reconnecting Through Nature. We also did one on sleep. Both of the men that we had on the show, because those 2 episodes were done with male co-hosts, both of them were veterans. Mm-hmm. And they shared their story as veterans. Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest things, and not at 40, veterans have it so hard when they become civilian.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because again, your identity is gone. Your identity is not your age. Your identity is not your career. It's not, you can start over anytime, any aspect of your life, because you're just reconnecting to yourself.
And it's what you said earlier. It really comes down to our beliefs, and the internal self-dialogue. I do a lot of language coaching and communications training. And, if you sit there all day going, I'm broke, I'm broke, I'm broke, I'm broke, I'm broke, I'm broke, like you will manifest broke. Your conscious mind is giving instruction to your subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind will create whatever reality you tell it to create. So if you sit there going, I'm broke, I'm broke, I'm broke, I'm broke, and you look at your bank account, you're going to be broke. And if you sit there going, I'm investing in myself, I'm investing in my future, I'm investing. Every time you put money into something, you release it with intention versus this fear and anxiety and stress, you're going to create a different reality based on your beliefs. But it really goes back to internal self-talk. And I think what happens, going back to the premise of this particular episode, is around 40, we're mature enough, we've lived enough lifetime to look back and go, oh, geez, am I living the life I want?
Yeah. And
very few people can say yes to that. And it's not necessarily your fault. There's so much societal programming, that to have the awareness to, number one, ask yourself that question. Number two, be honest with yourself about the answer to that question. And number three, recognize that a lot of it was imposed on you based on the beliefs of others, your community, your parents, your society, but that ultimately we have the opportunity to create our reality, then that's a very empowering position to put yourself in.
Yep. You just gave me an amazing business idea.
Yay! I know, I saw you grab the pen. I'm like, something clicked there. Yeah.
Yeah, something definitely clicked there. And one of the things that I'm going to start offering in a Phoenix Identity is midlife reconnect.
Mm-hmm.
Right? A midlife reconnect.
A ton of people looking for that.
Right? And it's not just midlife. So empty nest, when your kids leave, a reconnect. When you divorce, reconnect. Like, have a 3-month coaching package for a reconnect.
Well, this could even be for new mothers. You know, I mean, how many women fall into postpartum depression that, again, our society still doesn't give you permission to talk about it, you know, but talk about a transition. You go from having this happy-go-lucky life where you're having pizza at midnight with your husband, and all of a sudden you've got this crying baby 24 hours a day, you're exhausted, and you're going, what the heck did I just do? You know, so there's so many transitional points in life that I think if we have a support system, which you're offering, and I applaud you for that, can really help us move forward. And I think as women, we were kind of told, again, there's an undercurrent in what is being taught to people. But one of these things is you've got to do it all yourself. Says who? Says who? You know.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely going to run with that, because it's so needed. And it's not like you need to do it for, you know, years at a time. It doesn't have to be that long, right? So if anybody watching and catching this episode, because I am sponsoring this episode, so I can get away with a little bit. I'm going to be offering a reconnect, an identity reconnect, to help you reconnect to who you are after you've had children, after your children leave, when you retire, when, you know, you change careers, midlife crisis, whatever it looks like. I want to do a reconnect with you and help you reconnect to who you truly are, and not everything that everybody tells you you should be.
Yes. Well,
because that's a huge.
I was going to say, I'm so thankful for being able to share this space with you today. You know, this is the type of conversation that can go on for days and weeks and months. But I hope we were able to give your audience a little snippet of inspiration, a little snippet of support. And really, I mean, my final words are be excited. You know, life is magic and it's a gift. And, you know, there's a meme that I saw on Instagram, just in closing, where, you know, there's two people on a bus, and one of them is looking at a cliff face. So he's looking out the window, all he sees is this rock. And the other one's looking out the window, all he sees is the cliff itself. And one of them's super happy and one of them's super miserable. And they're both in the same place where the bus could tip over any minute. It's our choice to choose happiness. It's our choice to choose expansion. And we have so many places that we can go to for support, including you and your offerings. And so I would highly recommend that, you know. So thank you for having me today. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Of course. And you know what? I'm really proud of you to do what you did at 40. And not a lot of people have, and I'm going to say it, not a lot of people have the guts to do that. And not a lot of courage and just enough self-love to take those chances and be who you truly want to be. Mm-hmm. And you should and probably are tremendously proud of yourself, because that is something to be tremendously proud about. All right. Well, now that we've, for the most part, gotten this topic out of the way, if anybody has any questions, you're catching the replay and you want to connect with either myself or Katerina, please do so. Our links are in the description to reach out. You can do so. If you would like to get in touch with the show, be a guest co-host, a guest blogger, or you'd like to sponsor the show, you can do so at justalivetv.com. If you would like to join our movement, Women Supporting Women, where we are truly just building a community of women supporting other women, whatever choices they make, wherever they are on their journeys, and just giving them that safe, judgmental-free space. So thank you so much, Katerina, for joining me today. I really appreciated it. And I look forward to seeing what you have coming out.
Yeah, I look forward to playing together. You're awesome, and this was a lot of fun. And again, to all of you watching, just go. Life is amazing, and I wish you all the best.
Absolutely. All right, just a family. I want to say lots of love. I hope you have a wonderful night, morning, evening, whatever you're watching. Please, please have a wonderful day. And I will see all of you on the next episode. Bye.